Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading property experts. Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle channel, and Ben Kingsley, chair of Property Investors Council of Australia and the 2014 and 2015 Property Investment Advisors of the Year.
All right, folks, you're on the Property Couch where each week Ben and I bring you the insider's guide to property finance and money management. Welcome back, mate.
Mate, thanks for having me.
Hey.
Always good turning up.
How exciting. This will go out about 3 o'clock today, and then
Correct.
we will be down at Fed Square.
Setting up.
TPC Live.
Sold out.
Sold out. So for those who are coming, we're looking forward to meeting you. For those who didn't get a ticket, Ben, all is not lost.
No.
Stay tuned for next week.
And I'm looking forward to playing with my big screen.
You are, yeah.
It's a bit risky too because
First
I've got
time.
a lot of live stuff, a lot of live data feeds, and so hopefully it goes all right, but we'll know about that.
Just blame it on the internet.
Yeah. Hey Bryce, before we get knee deep in the show, a couple of other things we need to highlight. The Property Buyers Expo coming up in Melbourne from Friday, July the 20th to Sunday the 22nd. Tell us more.
Yeah, mate. Well, as you know, we've got our TPC Live in Melbourne, and some people did miss out. The date wasn't convenient, but we still want to meet the couches. So you and I will be talking. We'll be doing a live podcast at the show as well, Ben.
Brilliant.
So we want as many couches to turn up as possible. So in the link, Ivis, there will be a special code.
Free tickets.
Free tickets. Absolutely free tickets. So
And the code is Couch.
It is Couch. So we'll have that in the show notes, Ivis. But if you want to come along, we'd love to meet you. It's a great opportunity to say good day to our community, Ben. So use that code, get a freebie on us, Ben. And,
Melbourne Property Buyers Expo. Look forward to seeing you all there in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, we'll definitely see you there. So normally I have a Mindset Minute theme today,
Yeah, we
Ben,
do. Yep.
But before I introduce the guest, I'm just going to cut to this now.
Beautiful.
Hi, it's Jaemin, your 1-minute coach. There are 3 common approaches to trying to get ahead in life: the victim, the worker, and the winner. The victim is all about have, do, be. When I have enough time, money, and support, then I'll do the things I've always wanted to, and then I'll be happy and successful. But the problem is I don't have, so they are always waiting for externals to change. The worker is all about do, have, be. The more I do, the more I'll have, and the more I'll have, the happier I'll be. The problem is, the more I do, the more there is still to do, and I get defined by what I do and become driven, busy, and tired. So the being never arrives. The winner, on the other hand, is all about be, do, have. Not what do I need to have before I can start, or what work do I need to do, but who do I need to be? What kind of person would have access to those kind of outcomes? Then being that kind of person, what would I be doing? Then the having takes care of itself.
All right, Ben, so we have got a guest today. You obviously heard an excerpt there from the 1-minute coach.
Jaemin, yep.
Now, I've got to tell you that actually led to today, and I'll tell you why. Because Jaemin gets the opportunity to have those little 1-minute sound bites over the radio, and I'd heard it for a few years.
Yep.
And then he came on the radio and he said, look, I've got this personal development workshop that I'm doing. This is about a year ago.
Yep.
This personal development workshop that I'm doing. Why don't you come along? And for some reason, it just really resonated with me.
Great.
And you know, I've read a lot of books.
Yep.
I've been a student of life for a long, long time. And it was interesting because my parents were over. You and I and Stig were about to go to America the next day.
Yep.
And Andrea said to me, she goes, what are we doing? And I said, what do you mean? She goes, your parents are here. They're looking after the kids. And we're going to a seminar. And I'm thinking, right, yeah. And normally, like I'd paid, I think it was $20 to go along.
Yep.
And normally I would have buckled, right? And I've gone, she's right, we don't get free time from the kids very often.
Yep.
Earn the 20, go out. But for something, I just felt that I needed to go, right? So I withstood. I withstood the barrage because it happened a few times. And then in the end, we got there, Andrea turned up. Jaemin did a talk, Ben.
Yep.
And I watched Andrea and she listened to every word that he
Resonated.
said. And it actually had some new concepts that I hadn't heard before, right? Because here's what I thought, right? I'd read a lot of concepts and I thought the only thing that was missing in my life was the fact that there was parts that I wasn't implementing, right?
Yep.
I knew the stuff.
Yep.
You say knowledge is empowering only if you act on it.
Yep.
I just had the act on it bit left over and I didn't think there was any new tricks to learn.
Yep.
So I turn up to this this seminar that Jaemin's doing And little did I know there was a few new tricks to learn.
Oh.
So hence,
And we're getting some of those tricks today.
we are going to get some of those tricks today. We're going to go through some of those things. But before we move on, welcome, Jaemin.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Mate, you're welcome. Now, full disclosure to the listeners, Ben, Jaemin's now my personal development coach. I've engaged him to help me make sure that I do the implementation phase. But
isn't that interesting? Because we talk about getting coach, getting advice, getting guidance, and you would think that, you might think that we've got all our crap together, but the reality is we also have people that are mentoring us, that we have as advisors that can then guide us as well. We talk about the example of the tennis players having the best coaches still to be the best player. So even, you might think we're at a certain level, but we're still looking for answers and still trying to implement. So there you go.
Too right, Ben. All the virtual mentors that I know, they spend a lot of time, a lot of energy and a lot of money on making sure they stay sharp, so they get fresh ideas. So Jaemin has, I worked one-on-one with him. There's now an ongoing mastermind that I work with him. And it's actually changed the path of my vision of where we're going. Because not only has it worked with me, but is also implemented with my wife.
Great.
So we're now on the same page. So Jaemin, you've got a mission to eradicate insecurity globally. That's a big mission.
Small job.
Why are people so insecure about being insecure?
Look, we're doing everything we can to avoid being found out, I think. So insecurity is the common challenge. We all on some level have to cope with that. Most people will never ever get close to addressing it. They'll just jam so much in their life to look like they've got it all going on, so no one will ever assume that there's lack, but underneath the surface, that's what they're most afraid of. It's like, wow, what if I was found out as an imposter, as inadequate, as lacking? I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that never happens. Rather than sorting it out, it's just covered over, because it's the ultimate fear, I think.
Now, you've positioned yourself as a coach rather than a counsellor. Why is that frame so important for helping people sort of get past insecurity?
Because I am passionate about change. So I think if you want a conversation about change, I wouldn't be talking to anyone else other than a coach for a few key reasons. The first is, like when I engage someone, my first job is to convince them that I don't care about them. So I say, look, I know I look like a guy who cares, I know I sound like a guy who cares, but please do not confuse me for someone who cares. You'll tell me your life story, I'll forget about you, I won't lose any sleep over your problems, I won't shed a tear when you're sharing the pain points. I don't care, it's not my life, I'm not the one with the problem. I'm not another person in your life who wants you to do something you don't want to do. If you want someone to pump your tyres up and say, I believe in you, you've come to the wrong place and that's not going to serve you. But you tell me what you want, and I'll give you everything I've got inside me to serve that. But you've got to want it. So I think it just creates this judgment-free space where there's no right or wrong, no good or bad. It's why conversations about change with anyone else becomes really messy, because there's always this wanting. There's always an agenda, and we want something for or from that person. So it's not safe to be real. Whereas you create this clean space where there's no judgment and no wanting, then people come out of hiding and go, well, whether I should be here or I shouldn't be here, here is where I am. And the moment that comes out, well, then you've got something to work with. If you're not willing to be honest about current reality, you can't get to the desired reality anyway. So I think that space alone makes coaching so conducive for the change conversation and the transformational conversation.
Are you doing anything around acknowledging some of the stuff that they might be doing well? Is it all just, or is it like, don't care about that either?
No, I mean, I care. What I care about is being useful. That's what I care about. And so I realised the best way for me to be useful is not to bring my map of the world and just to serve. But I think it's a really important point you raise, because one of the presuppositions around coaching and moving forward is that you have all that you need already inside you. So I look at what you're doing well, because you've obviously worked out how to solve the problem in that area, but you haven't transferred it to this area. So you've got all the stuff inside you already, you're not aware of it, you're not using it, you're limiting yourself here, how can we transfer that to this? And you can solve your own problems. You're the expert, I'm just the guide.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. I mean, we talk about it when we're sitting down around trying to affect change around money management and trying to help people find financial peace. The first thing we set up is similar, where we sort of say, hey, I'm going to high five you on the things that I like about what you're doing, but I'm going to eyeball you on the things and challenge you on the things that that we see money left on the table, or we see laziness, or we see all that type of stuff. So we refer to it as accountability partner. Don't come in and expect us to do, as you say, sort of high five you with everything and pump up your tyres. There's another saying that I normally use, but I won't use it for the podcast, because that's ultimately the journey of a guide, isn't it? Or coach or mentor or advisor.
I think mentor and coach is slightly different. Mentor is not a judgment-free space, and it needs to remain with judgment. Because if I ask you to mentor me, I'm saying, I've seen your results, I love them, can you teach me to do what you did? So I'm submitting to your guidance. So you're going to say, hey, listen, do this and don't do that. Whereas if I ask you to coach me, it's not because I want to be like you, I want to be like me. So I don't want you to tell me what to do, I want you to help me draw out that for myself. So I think we need both, but they are different.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because if we look at elite sport, we normally find that the coach has had prior success in the work, like in the industry that they're in. So the successful tennis coaches of today, Boris Becker, whatever they are now, Ivan Lendl, were all great major winners.
Sure.
So they walked a mile, seen a mile. Football, it's rare that we would see a coach come into AFL and not be a high profile, very successful player. Yet some of the better coaches, Alex Clarkson, was an average player. Sorry, Alistair, if you're listening. Ross Lyon. Ross Lyon, but had maybe didn't have the skill sets to take them through, but have been working on themselves and then were a leader of men in that particular case. But do you think that limits? I mean, is there limited thinking broadly why we always need to have the James Hird, the Nathan Buckleys, these so-called messiahs, these superstars that can then think that they can transition to coaching?
Yeah, well, I think the expectation is we are looking for the heroes.
Yeah.
But I don't think that facilitates change. So lasting change always happens when the client is positioned as the hero and the coach is the guide. I think NBA is a good example. Tyronn Lue, Cavs. He's never going to be better than LeBron, but it's his job to draw out the magic of LeBron and get out of the way, facilitate a space where those guys can bring their magic. Yeah. So I think that's it.
Like Scottie Pippen, with the Bulls when, Jordan was playing. There's always that good right-hand man that's also being part of that story as well, on the court as well as in the coaching side of things.
What are some of the things, and I know a lot of these answers, so I've got to prompt it for the benefit of the listeners, but what gets in the way of people dealing with their insecurity? Because if you wrote a book that said, why are you insecure? No one would pick it up because they don't want to sit on the plane or sit at the train station with someone reading that book because they don't want them to know they're insecure. So what are some of the barriers?
Well, firstly, it's the awareness of the problem they're solving. So people are typically aware of the pain points around their relationships, around their health, and around their finances, and that's the problems they're trying to solve. What they're not aware of, or what they're pretending not to be aware of, is the fact that the driver for that dysfunction and that pain is the deeper level fear of not being good enough, which is, and I think it serves them not to be aware of that because it's a far harder, scarier problem to solve. So it feels like I'm making progress, I'm fixing my life by making small improvements on the surface, when in fact they just keep going around in circles because there's this driving force continuing to limit and sabotage their success in those areas.
So what's an example of someone that you've seen, that you've coached, and they've got financial challenges? So, because this is a property finance podcast. So someone who's come to you and they just keep hitting brick wall after brick wall when it comes to finances. How do you unpack that for the benefit of the listeners?
Can I tell you my own?
Yeah.
So I'm running my own business. I feel like I'm 110% committed to financial abundance. I'm doing everything I can to improve my financial position. Yet I notice sabotage. And I notice patterns where I continually experience lack, and it frustrates me, and I think, hang on a minute, how could this be possible? I'm so committed. So for me to find change there was to unpack the story underneath that and explore what is producing this. So the discovery was for me that my parents had inadvertently taught me as a youngster that you can't be rich and good. So
interesting. Yeah.
We knew no good people who were rich people. Every rich people we knew were bastards. Like they left their wives, they'd greedy, selfish. Yeah. And so we only knew good people who were poor. And growing up in the church, it was kind of esteemed that you give away, you serve others, money is dangerous. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think my parents ever would have told me, hey, Jaemin, don't ever be rich, money's dangerous. But it was just what was the unspoken rule. So subconsciously, I want to be a good person, but I've linked money to being a bad person. So I can't afford to let myself experience abundance. So there's this subconscious force holding me back from what I consciously am committed to. So it wasn't until I went back and explored that story and rewrote that story where I kind of gave myself permission to go, hang on, it's not money that corrupts, it's insecurity that corrupts. Money just magnifies what's in your heart. So if I'm checking my intentions and honestly committed to doing good in the world, well, money's just going to help me do more of that for myself and my family and the world. So when I change that, then the surface level, all the energy and commitment I'm bringing consciously to this finally can produce fruit, and all the abundance that's there anyway, now I can access.
So Jaemin, we've jumped straight in, it's fantastic stuff. Can we reverse back and get a bit of the backstory? So who are you? How did you find your way into this sort of coaching environment? Can you share that with the listeners?
Yeah, sure. So coaching is very natural to me because I've always loved working with people. So I started as a church pastor when I was 23, got thrown in the deep end.
Wow, yeah.
We had a Christian school and a daycare centre, and I discovered 6 weeks into the job that it was all trading insolvently. So, here, Jaemin, here you go.
Yeah, fix this,
good luck. So it was this baptism of fire, but I brought my whole heart to it because I just love the idea of being able to be a positive influence and very idealistic, and I love the idea of seeing the best in people and seeing people grow and change. But I think I was probably a pretty frustrated pastor because continually having conversations with people about change that never brought about change.
Mm-hmm. Lead them to water, but they won't
go.
Well,
for sure, and Christians continually outsourcing the change work to God.
Yeah,
so if I just rock up and do the religious thing, God will zap me, he'll fix my finances, he'll heal my marriage, he'll fix my body, and it'll all be sweet.
Yeah.
This idea of responsibility and choice, hang on, that's strange, that sounds really weird. So I'm constantly banging my head against that. So when I got exposed to the coaching skill set by someone who was mentoring me in the role, I just was like, where has this been? This is a missing technology.
Yeah.
These tools are so practical and so sharp and so resourceful, and this could actually work. And so I straight away went and did some study, and I was working as a school chaplain at the time as well.
Yep.
Day one of the coach training, got to the end of the day, had such a dramatic experience of this is me. Called my wife, said, I'm quitting my job, I'm starting a coaching business. She cried, not the happy kind of tears, and the other kind go, it's right, I've got this. This is, just swinging away. Just gave myself 4 weeks to go and make it work.
Yeah.
And it was 3 weeks and 6 days. And I thought, I haven't found any way to make this work. What was I doing? And then fortuitously got an arrangement with an employment agency to provide coaching to the long-term unemployed. So I got to cut my teeth developing a system and a coaching program for Streamforce. So sometimes they'd never had a job, all kinds of barriers. And I just thought, if I can prove it works here, it can work anywhere.
What a great environment.
It was an amazing experience.
Yeah.
And I can still remember that one of the first clients I had after the session, he was illiterate. He was a 35-year-old guy. His 5-year-old son had been murdered by his ex-wife's new partner and hadn't gone to trial. He came in wearing a hat and he would not look at me. His brim covered his eyes. He was just shut down, checked out of life. And they said, here you go, Jaemin, have a go with this guy.
Yeah.
And I can still vividly remember walking out the back after that session and just breaking down in tears. Not that I felt sorry for him, but the joy it was to engage this guy in a conversation and have him experience hope again. Just because he saw the choices that he'd been living with the illusion of no choice as a victim of his world, to actually empower him with some stuff that worked. And that guy got out of that hole, got a job, learnt to read and write. It was just an amazing experience. And so, so I was sold to this idea. This coaching stuff is so amazing.
Yeah, it's got to be highly fulfilling when it pays dividends like that.
Was there any insights that you could share on how you got that brim hat not looking at it to the point where you went to tears?
Oh, well, firstly, just to go, hey, listen, I don't care, by the way. Like, just straight up. Just say, by the way, I'm not here to pump your tyres up. I won't lose any sleep over the fact that your life is in a massive hole at the moment. Tell me what you want and I'll give you everything I've got to serve that. And he's like, I don't want anything. I was like, I don't believe you, even for a second. Yeah. To desire is human, so that's not going to work for me. So just just worked around and around that idea that there is desire, you've given up, you've lost hope, and then educated with some knowledge around the illusion of no choice. And just one by one helped him see his place in this mess and to realise that, life is not about what happens to us, it's about the meaning we place on the things that happen to us. So just power, just responsibility and choice. And slowly he saw that he had some stuff. And, I think hopelessness comes when you live with the illusion of no choice. But the moment you see you have real choice, hope comes back. It was a dramatic turnaround that happened.
And when you say responsibility, that is take responsibility.
Take responsibility.
Like ultimately I'm here through some of the choices that I made, some outside my control, but a lot inside my control in terms of I can't read or write. That was a...
Yeah, and he was living with a whole bunch of blame, which makes a lot of sense. Like there was some really bad things that happened to this guy. So I said, you have every right to play the blame card for the rest of your life, and me or anyone else could never say that's a bad choice. The only thing is that's not going to get you anything. So you're welcome to it, but how's it going to serve you? Responsibility, on the other hand, is going to give you what you want. So that's the way out of this.
Can I pick up on something you just said? In terms of, there's people who are listening to this podcast who have got all sorts of things that have happened to them, and some of them invariably will have had some abuse when they were younger. You've got a really interesting take on that, and I know someone personally who has heard what you have to say about it, and it's transformed the way that event affected their life. Can you share that?
Well, typically people imagine because of what has happened to them, therefore their life is messed up, especially some horrible stuff like abuse. The transformation happens when you realise you're not just an actor in a story someone else has written for you, you are the storyteller. So when we go through life, subconsciously we are always asking and answering two questions to every experience from the moment we have any kind of awareness, and that is, why did this happen and what does it mean about me? So as children with limited emotional intelligence and rational capability, when painful things happen, we answer those questions negatively. Why did this happen and what does it mean about me? Well, somehow this means I'm bad or wrong, or I deserve this, or I attracted this. So that's the pattern around abuse. Not that someone was abused, but that when they were abused, the story they told about why that happened and what that meant about them, that's the thing that destroys them. That's the thing that gets inside them. So it's again moving people out of the victim space, saying, yes, it happened, but it's not the fact that it happened that's ruined you. Because if that were true, if we were just victims, then if you'd have terrible things happen, you'd have a terrible life. If you'd had a good upbringing, you'd have a wonderful life. But we all know that's not how the world works. So the shift is positioning yourself as the storyteller rather than the victim in the story. To go, when I was young, I was the one that told the story. I decided that meant I was no good. So it wasn't what was done to me, it was what I said about what was done to me. Therefore, I created this mess, so I'm the only one who can change it. I'm the powerful person in my world. So again, this empowering conversation, stepping out of the victim space, embracing choice and responsibility.
It's fascinating. There's a very, very successful Simon Sinek YouTube video talking about millennials.
Yeah, right.
And in this particular interview, he talks about that it's not their fault. That they're not the ones to blame. It's basically how they were raised, and this sense of everyone should get an award for participation and all that type of thing. So he was connecting with the millennials, and in an interesting way, he was then saying, so it was up to businesses who want to employ these people, because he talks about these people come in with great hope and purpose, and they want to change the world. So they've got a good social connection with society and with each other. And I think that's the wonderful thing about millennials. I think that there is for the first time in several generations, there is something about paying it forward and sharing, in this collective community. So big tick there. But then they come into the businesses, and he talks about they get there and they're 4 weeks into the business, and they have this real challenge around, I just feel like I'm not making the impact that I want to make, because everything's on demand in my life, and so it should be making a big impact. But I think what I'm liking about what you're telling me is that, it's a classic, if it is to be, it's up to me. And in terms of how I'm thinking about that story, that I can have this sense of, and this is happening, I think, generally in Australian society, is that there are those people that's like, what can the government do for me? Like it's the school system's responsibility to educate me. It's the government's responsibility to provide my health care. It's everyone else's bar me is that opportunity. And I for one, are worried about that mindset and where that leads society in general, that if it is up to somebody else to deliver that message, then how are we going to affect change?
Well, I for one am not worried about that mindset, because one of the stories I tell myself about success is that success is actually really easy, because you've only got to do a few things semi-consistently and you very quickly rise above the pack. You know, so I
Don't leave us hanging.
Well, here's an opportunity, right? Because most people are never going to take responsibility. Most people are going to be entitled. So the masses are doing a whole bunch of stuff. If you just make a slight shift, you very quickly position yourself in a crowded marketplace. A lot of people are telling themselves, oh, it's so competitive. How do you possibly get ahead? Well, you just be a bit smarter. You just do a few things that are very different. So coaching 101 is, what do you want? And that sounds like such a simple question. But it is the hardest question in the whole world, because it forces you into the responsibility space. So I think only 5% of the world's population ask and answer that question well, and the rest have settled for someone else deciding what they should or shouldn't do.
And taking their advice from their peers, who have a similar mindset.
That's exactly right.
And there is a direct correlation between the successful people and potentially their financial balance sheet. You know, so that's not through luck. You know, it's the same sort of thing when you're building businesses and you're building a life. You know, the culture that you build in a business isn't through luck. You know, it isn't that you gather a group of like-minded people. There is a science to identifying who those people are, who might be altruistic, who want to pay it forward, and all those types. You bring that powerful group together and you can transform other people's lives, and there's this connection that you get. So if you are hanging around successful people, not necessarily the ones who have done it by stepping on others, like, you know, which is, there still are some rich people. I don't like that word rich, personally. I think it's you know, my mindset of what that word means is exactly what you talk about. I see rich as being, you know, opulence and excessiveness and all of that. So I've got this picture of, you know, Richie Rich and all of that from the movies and everything. So I don't like that word, and you'll never hear me. But when we talk about a richness in our lives and a richness in connection with people and a deeper understanding of those, I like that word in that environment, but I just don't like it in the monetary sense in terms of excessive, you know, cars and boats and all that crap that goes with the imagery that we present to consumers around, you know, being wealthy.
Yeah, sure.
Hey, quick one for you, Jaemin. We jumped around because I could sort of go on tangents all day, right? But the thing is that I was really keen for the listeners to hear is the 5 personal development tools that you feel will make lasting change. Now, we've touched on a couple, but just for the benefit of the listeners so that they can actually listen to this and work through it, what are those 5 and where would you kick it off?
Fantastic. I would kick it off with number 1, be very clear about what you want. And do the harder you work around that question, the easier it is to achieve it. So it sounds like such a simple question. I promise you, it is the most dangerous and most powerful question we ever get faced with as human beings.
I did it this morning, and you're right, it's actually hard.
Well, it is hard because it pushes you into an open space, an uncertain space, a space where you could get judged, a space where you could fail, a space where you could get disappointed. So that's why people don't do it. They're like, well, yeah, what if I put this out there? What if that's what I want and then I don't get it? That's going to hurt. So I'm just going to settle for something less.
We use the example where you say on the beginning of your podcast you want to eradicate insecurity at the global level.
Yeah. Well, it's a ridiculous thing to say, right? And the first time I wrote that, I was like, what? Where's that come from? Are you sure? Really?
How can I make it happen?
Well, but the things that come out of my list when I do this goal setting, what do I want, often scare me. And I think that to me resonates with this. There's probably something very real inside that, because it's going to push me to really discover what I'm capable of. But I think people often underestimate the cost of what do you want. They think it's all bells and whistles, but everything comes with a price. So you can have whatever you want as long as you're willing and able to pay all the associated costs. So the reason why I say knowing what you want is where I'd start. For
example, the costs? You got to pay all the costs. What's an example for the listeners?
Of solving the insecurity problem?
No, in terms you said you got to be careful if you're putting
education.
They want the positive, but they're not sure about the cost. So, what's an example you'd give the listener?
Okay, so Australia, for starters, we're the only country in the world with the tall poppy syndrome. So the moment you start putting your neck out and saying, "I want to achieve this," culturally you go, "Well, settle down a bit, mate. Get your hand off.
Bring back to the norm."
Yeah, righto. So immediately you run the risk of ostracising yourself with friends and family, and people say, "Oh, I wish I had more confidence." Well, you're sure? Because confident people get judged more, make more mistakes, put themselves in the limelight more. All these issues that not confident people never have to face. So you're going to be the kind of person that sets goals and moves forward. Well, be prepared to be misunderstood, to be judged, to face conflict. Often when people are stepping out of their family home, parents have a clear ideal and dream for their children, and you start asking them, "What do I want?" question. What if it's different from your parents' dream for your life? Then immediately there's conflict. And maybe you ostracize that relationship. There are many people who've wanted something totally different from their parents, and that has broken a relationship. So it's a dangerous question, yet to desire is human. So the moment you shut that down, you dehumanize yourself and you just settle and survive. And you just plug into the system, let everyone else dictate what you should or shouldn't do. So that question gets you in touch with your humanity more than any other question. And it's the driver for all change. If you don't have a compelling vision for how your life must be, then it's too hard to deal with insecurity. It's too hard to deal with fear. There's no reason. You've got to have this compelling thing that says, if I don't find a way to deal with this, I will never get close to what I want. So I think it's definitely number one. Be very clear about what you want.
I got a great example of that is my beautiful mother, right?
Yeah.
Very protective, lived a comfortable life, raised us with great morals and a real social connection with other people. Yeah. Ben, your business is getting a little bit big now. I think you should.
Your dad pulled me aside and he said the same thing.
I think you should slow down a little bit. Take. It's like, but I'm helping more people. It's like, sure. So it's like, thanks, Mum, because maybe the 23-year-old Ben might have thought, all right, well, they've lived a life. I should, take their direction. No, these days it's like, thanks, Mum. Thanks. I'm glad that you care. But I've got this. Yeah. I'm okay. I know what I'm doing. His
business partners can't even get him to slow down. What chance do you have?
But it's interesting. There's that. Was it John McGrath calls it the mooring line? That you caught this mooring line and you're sort of dragging these people along. But sometimes you just got to say, I love that they're there for me if something goes wrong. But I'm going to cut that mooring line and have a go. Because
I can relate to that, Jaemin, because I don't know if you know that I moved out of home because I had an argument with my father about what I wanted didn't line up with what he wanted for me. And I moved to the other side of the country. That's how strongly I felt about it.
The same when I stepped out of being a pastor into a coach, that was not what my world wanted for me at all. Yeah. And it was incredibly difficult. People misunderstood that totally and still do. But when I checked in with the desire in my heart, this is a better chance, this is a bigger chance, this is more aligned with who I really am and what I'm capable of.
Yeah, brilliant. So that's number one.
Number two, work with yourself rather than against yourself. So self-discipline is massively overrated as a change strategy. I say that all the time, and culturally that's wrong. People love self-discipline. It's rated as the highest thing. It's the most important tool. You just need to be more disciplined. But self-discipline works on the presupposition that there's this fat, lazy, recalcitrant part of you that doesn't want to succeed, that you have to conquer and subdue and win over. So there's constant inner conflict that's going on. It's brutal. Like if you were to treat another person like that, you wouldn't get away with it. So the idea of working with yourself rather than against yourself is just this ability to stop and understand what for. What is this resistance? What is the intention of it? And you start exploring the intention and you discover the intention is always positive. You're just trying to keep yourself safe from something. So for me, my resistance around earning money was I didn't want to be a bad person. So my resistance around earning money is actually a protection strategy, and we protect that which we love. So part of me is loving me and holding me back from being a bad person. So if I try and fight against that part, that's really, really cruel. Change comes when I actually understand that intention and go, thank you so much for loving me and protecting me, subconscious. Is there a better way to love and protect me that could also align with my goals and vision? So self-permission is a far more beautiful, lasting, deeper form of motivation than self-discipline could ever be. And it's all about working with yourself. This beautiful rapport and relationship between your head and your heart, your mind and your body, your subconscious and your conscious. So if you're driving out of self-discipline, it's willpower. Sure, it has some value, but you will never have access to the magic just by forcing yourself. And then you get tired and you fall back. Whereas self-permission is unlimited and allows you to be at your best and flourish. So that's a massive one at number 2.
Mm-hmm. Is that where people work perfectly? Does that come a bit later?
That comes a bit later.
Okay, so what's the next one?
So number 3 is state management. So manage your energy, not your time. So kind of in line that, again, culturally, it's all about time management, getting the most out of your day, really working hard. But state is king. If you can control your state, you can control your outcome. So peak performers understand that in order to get the goals they're trying to achieve and really hit some of the amazing targets they've set for themselves, they have to be at their best. So they understand it's all about accessing this peak performance state. Because if they're not in the great state, well, they're never going to achieve the goal. Every state has open and closed doors. What you're able to achieve on your best day is very different than on your worst day. So if you're feeling anxious, flat, frustrated, tired, the door's shut to creativity, to wisdom, to insight. But if you're peaking and bouncing off the walls, the door is wide open to your best stuff. Sport's a great example of that. Cricket players described as being out of form. It's just an issue of state. They're still the same player with the same skills, they just can't access it. So number 3 is paying attention to managing your state and realising that it is one of the things you get to control. A lot of people are letting others control their state. If the sun's shining, I feel good. If people are encouraging me, I feel good. But peak performers do not let state management up to anybody else. They understand how to do that through great rituals and anchors. They know that the triggers that put them in peak performance, and they practice state management as a priority. Because even if it takes you 2 hours out of your precious day to manage your state, and then after those 2 hours you're then peaking and in this great mindset and fully firing, what you're capable of achieving for the rest of the day is always going to be far greater than just forging through and trying to manage your time and just pushing. State management.
Because it can be simple as whenever I'm writing a cover story, Ben, for money, I've got a specific playlist that I listen to and I get into the zone. I don't use that playlist at any other time, and it allows me to switch off from all of the distractions that we've got so that I can stay focused, and which I'll be using that playlist as we finalise the script for the book. Cover. But you've got one that we chatted about. As simple as knowing that you go to the movies, or there's a favourite chair, or there's a cup of tea. Can you share a couple that?
Yes. I mean, I have clothes linked to state. So it's always about matching the state to the outcome. So you get clear about what you want, and that's right. Who do I need to be to have access to that? So it's not about always being in a great state. It's about being in the right state. So for instance, if my outcome is I'm hosting a bonfire at my place and all the lads are coming round, who do I need to be? Well, they don't actually want the coach. No. They want the lad.
Yeah.
So I've got a Parramatta jersey, and I put this on. Sorry for you Melbourne folks, NRL, and I'm a farmer. I put that on, and so those clothes link me to state. If I've got a speaking presentation, I've got favourite jackets. The moment I put it on, I feel like, yeah, come on, like I could take on the world right now. I have cologne that links me to state. Favourite smell. Smell is the most powerful anchor. I have a playlist that's always being updated with songs that just give me life. The power of music to affect every cell in your body. Rituals. I love breakfast, so I make sure that I do breakfast well, and I love doing breakfast well for my family. So I love, mastering eggs and having coffee brewing and having music playing and just setting that up. So there's a whole bunch of rituals, and I summarise that by saying, go where the life is. What gives me life? Do that. Avoid the things that give me death, and it's always going to help me be at my best.
So, I love my sport and I love my music and so forth, but if I was to try and correlate that in terms of the state, golfers get the yips, right? Yeah. The putting yips. Yeah. Football players get the yips in front of goal. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I was listening to Scott Pendlebury talk about, how he gets that state. And I suspect it's similar to all the best people and the high performers in the world. Is his line to himself, I've done the work.
Yeah.
So in other words, it's like I've had 500 shots on goal. So if he misses in a game, he will then do extra work during the training week where he might have another 40 or 50 shots on goal.
Yeah.
To sort of say, and I've got 99% of those, or I've got 100% of those, so I've done the work.
Yeah, for sure.
So next time I'm in that position again, you know, it's that split second thing, done the work. I've, you know, or a tennis player might be, I've made this shot before.
Great.
I continually make this shot. The golf is like, I've made this putt before. I've made this chip before, and those types of things. So is there something
consistently, high performers have reset buttons.
Yeah.
Because you can't control a bunch of external things that are going to knock you out of state. You're going to get bumped out of track, but they know how to reset. So, you know, cricketers, David Warner, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, his reset, both gloves off between every ball. Steve Smith, a whole routine, touching his pads and his box, and Nadal, between every shot, there's resets. There's picking the undies out. There's the hair going back,
adjusting the jacket.
It can be a word that you say to yourself, or it can be something you visualise, or something you actually touch or do. But affirmations are really key. So for me, a reset one is, Jaemin, remember who you are, and just that line, it's like, hey, of course, remember who I am, Jaemin. Like instant state alignment back to being at my best.
Yep.
Whatever you find that works for you, and it's so subjective, because what's good for one person's state is terrible for another.
And you'll find those patterns as you keep trialling.
Exactly, and giving yourself permission. That's the hardest thing. Like, I go to the movies on a Thursday morning by myself. The first time I tried that, I'm heading out the door on a Thursday morning. It's 9:30. My wife says, "Oh, you off to work?" No, I'm going to the movies. Wait, what time is it? Who are you going with? Oh, no one. You do know it's my day off, don't you? And you haven't invited me? Like, please explain. You know, so at that moment it would have been very easy for me to go, you're right, what am I thinking? I've got work to do or come with. But I go, actually, I feel like this is the best use of my time, energy and money right now. And this will not only be good for me, but good for you as well. So I'm going to trust my own wisdom that spending 2 hours checking out, doing something that I love, is going to put me in such a great state that's going to help us achieve our family goals, the business goals, finance goals, and you'll benefit from this as well. So I think this ability to trust yourself and give yourself permission is the hardest thing to live by. Energy management rather than time management. Because culturally it doesn't fit.
Wow, totally doesn't fit. I mean,
you're supposed to be doing the do.
My anxiety levels would be through the roof.
For sure.
For doing something like that.
Like, going to the movies on Tuesday morning.
Oh, just not working would be my... Sunday afternoons, my anxiety levels start to lift.
Well, I think it's common. So for me, I was the same, but the shift was, hang on, what do I want? Great. So who do I need to be to get it? Well, driving, forcing self-discipline, I have no chance of actually getting that. I need magic. If I'm going to get anywhere near my dreams, I need magic. So I got to manage my energy, not my time. So like, I have a sleep after lunch most days, and that's part of my ritual. And I love noticing what happens when I tell people down the street, you know, and because culturally that's not okay. It's
not here going, anyway. In Spain, it's fine.
How you going, Jaemin? How you going, Jaemin? Busy? Like, and how you going, busy? And you're supposed to say, oh, geez, I'm busy. Yeah. Let me tell you how busy I am. But I love just going, no, I'm not busy. I just had a sleep. I'm going to the movies. You know, it's like, what are you doing? Like, why? Who are you? What's wrong with you? So there's that pressure, which works against energy management. So it's not complicated, but it's not easy.
It's the judgment, isn't it?
It's
the external judgment that goes on with that. Yep.
Number 1, be clear on what you want. Number 2, work with yourself instead of against yourself, Ben. 3, pay attention to managing your state.
Exactly. Number 4 flows onto that. It's be internally referenced rather than externally referenced, which is incredibly important for being able to do any of the rest of this. So, you know, Big Tony Robbins, I think his finest contribution to the realm of human behavioural science is his work on 6 core needs. I think it, overrides Maslow by a mile. His 6 are certainty, variety, significance, love and connection, contribution and growth. And he says, by virtue of the fact we're human, these needs are always being met. Whether you're aware of it or not doesn't matter. You will find some way subconsciously to meet all these needs. So it's kind of the driver for all that we do is in some way an attempt to fill those holes. So if you're not aware of how you're meeting those needs, typically you're meeting those needs externally through things, through other people, through things outside of your control, which work well when they work well, but the moment they don't, you're in lack again. So it drives a lot of dysfunction. So one of the key ones is the need for significance, and typically people meet that need externally. So I will feel significant when you like me, when you approve of me, when you validate me, when you give me feedback that I'm doing the right thing. So always looking for that from your world, which again, if you have a supportive environment, a whole big fan base, cheering you on, well, you feel okay, but it's always fleeting, because even when someone does affirm you or validate you, it lasts like that, and then you need more.
Well, that's why celebrities are in challenge, aren't they? Because they get big fan bases, they get people admiring them, but as you say, it's fleeting, and they're always looking for the next one. But
That's
it
right.
needs to be bigger and bigger for them.
It does, because it's this cup is never full.
Which is why with television, I've always made sure I've checked, and hanging around with good people like I get to hang around with, is to make sure that the currency in television is what do people think about me. And if you go down that rabbit warren, it is a quick route to being really unhappy. So I don't play. I enjoy. I've got a business that really stimulates me here with Ben and Ivis, but I get to play in the television space for 5 minutes, and it's fun. But I don't let it define me. I don't really interact with too many people in the television space, because I've seen too many people who go down that path and they lose their way, because it starts out being okay, then all of a sudden it starts out being who likes me, and then all of a sudden, am I going to get the next gig, and what do the television bosses think about me, and all of a sudden I see them go down a very
Sure.
slippery
Well,
slope.
neediness is the least attractive you can position yourself in the world in any relationship. So if you are externally referenced, you are by definition needy. So the alternative is to be internally referenced. So it's to take 100% ownership and responsibility for meeting all those needs yourself. So certainty. Like I have a ring on my right hand, which is a visual reminder of a commitment I made to my wife 20 years ago. I have a ring on my left hand, which is a visual reminder of a commitment I made to myself 8 years ago. And it was around resourceful certainty. It was around, Jaemin, embrace uncertainty and back yourself. You're a good person, you're a clever person, you're a creative person, permission to go swing away and bring your best. So that embrace uncertainty and back myself is resourceful certainty, because it's like, who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? Who knows what this person's going to say or do? All you know is when you get there, you'll work it out, just like you have every other day. You've got this. And so that gives me such a strong sense of certainty, then it enables me to be very strong in the world. Resourceful variety, making sure I've got adventure planned into my calendar, make sure hobbies, rituals, life-giving things are factored in. Because if I don't, then there's going to be external variety and drama and chaos and messiness and busyness, and significance is the key one though. So just owning the fact that I am enough. Doing the work around dealing with that insecurity, which is a whole other conversation, but needless to say, it's a vital piece of personal development work, this ownership piece. To have it sorted once and for all, I have nothing to prove and nothing to defend, because I am owning my value. I haven't contracted it out to the world. It's sorted, it's okay. So that positions me very powerfully, because you can't take that away from me or add it to me. So I'm here because I want to, not because I have to. Love and connection the same. Self-love is the foundation for all loving relationships. So all that to say, there's a lot of work to be done in swapping out all the external strategies to bringing them in-house, being your own refuge and getting that sorted. So that's number 4, be internally referenced rather than externally.
I don't know if we've got time, but the martyr, the way you describe what the martyr gets and what those needs is really powerful. And it's a good example for the listeners to see that in action.
Well, it's unresourceful significance, so it's an external strategy. So one of the patterns around external significance is comparison. So the martyr strategy is subconsciously driven. They keep themselves connected with people who consistently behave worse than they do. So they've got a reference point to elevate their own significance. And they look around and they take stock when they go to sleep at night. I'm better than you, and I'm better than you. And I would never even think about doing what you're doing, so I'm better than you.
Is that why people watch those TV shows like Married at First Sight? And
for sure. It gives them it's like, oh, these people are
I actually
stupid.
my life is gold. Look at those people on the TV.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had a guy who was complaining about how bad his marriage was and how poorly his wife was treating him. And he says, I can't keep going on like this. And I say, well, I think you can. I think you love being treated poorly. It helps you sleep at night. Which is like, what the?
Yeah.
But it's meeting his need for significance, because he's got a reference point of someone who behaves worse than he does. So he's constantly being able to take the moral high ground. And when he reflects on what he's able to tolerate, he's thinking, I'm a freaking saint because of what I can cope with and still function and love the kids and go to work. So it's all the while on the surface complaining about how bad people treat them, but consistently attracting bad behaviour and hanging on to it so that you get to take the moral high ground and therefore be a significant person. Whereas if you had no one treating you poorly, you'd actually have to just go be significant on your own bat and people are not sure that they are enough, so they drag unresourceful external strategies.
And that's why, we're seeing more and more people have facial work done, and they're the ones who are trying to get on these TV shows. And you just sort of think, poor people, like, look internally. There's,
exactly.
There's so much more that you can be. But if you think that people are going to like you in terms of the way you look, and that's not going to get you that grounding and that sort of internal love that you're looking for.
No, and it'll drive you insane. Like, it really will consume you if you're running external strategies for all these needs.
Yep.
So, 5.
Yeah, 5 is let go of judgment. Self-judgment is not the strategy. Like, we imagine the drill sergeant is going to whip us into shape, the internal critic. It's like, come on, be better, do more. But the intention of self-judgment is just protection. It's a preemptive strike. If I judge myself, then you don't need to. If I beat myself down first, then it takes it off the table. So it's a protection strategy. And as I said before, we only protect that which we love. So it is a form of self-love. A strange form of self-love, but that is the positive intention nonetheless. So when people get that and realise, my goodness, there's got to be a better way of loving myself than judging myself, and then take judgment off the table, then it opens up self-awareness. Because you can't do self-judgment and self-awareness at the same time. If you're trying to look internally and you fear judgment, you'll just be safe and you'll just give the right answers. You can never fully be honest. Take judgment off the table, you can come out of hiding and just explore what's actually going on. And awareness is 90% of the key. If you can't see it, how can you possibly change it? So I think you take judgment out of the way, give yourself permission to do self-awareness, and then go explore what's happening, what's driving, what's the story, what's producing this behaviour. Separate behaviour from intention. Typically we think we're bad people because we do bad things. It's not true. We do bad things because we're needy people and we haven't found a better way to meet that need. Take judgment off the table and just go, oh, there you go, that's why I do that. Amazing. I bet I could find a more resourceful way to meet that same intention. No self-judgment is number 5.
Okay. So that was clear on what you want, work with yourself instead of against yourself, pay attention to managing your state. 4 is internally referenced, not externally referenced. And 5 is letting go of judgment.
No self-judgment, that's right.
They're the top ones?
No, the top ones.
Yeah.
Just as, I mean...
Well, because we haven't talked about people work perfectly. And I think that was one of the most powerful things for me. When I first heard that, I thought that was a game changer.
Well, to me, it sets up the space for the tools. So the counterintuitive idea around people work perfectly is that culturally, emotionally, rationally, we think we're broken. That's our problem. We go, my results are weird and strange and broken, and I am bad, so I just need to manage and mask and medicate the brokenness so it doesn't manifest in my world. But one of the sharpest insights from the world of human behavioural science is, no, the results you're getting in your life are the exact results you've designed your system to produce. People work perfectly. They might not be the results you want, but they are the results you have created. They're not random. So it's like if you went to a factory that was producing boxes and out of the assembly line came a box missing a side, you'd be tempted to say that box was broken, but if you keep seeing boxes coming out missing sides, you couldn't say the box is broken. You'd have to say it's a design issue. There's something with the factory. So if you want a box with all the sides on it, you've got 2 options. Either go fix the factory, make the change there, which is automatically going to change the box, or post-production, manually fit sides on boxes. And everyone hears that, they go, oh, that's crazy, why would you do that? But that is how most people do change. It's behaviour management. It's manually fitting sides on boxes. So I love the language of course. So when you take judgment out, people are they're bewildered by their problems in their life. I can't lose weight, I can't earn money, can't find a partner, I can't work out these things. And I just go, of course, and what did you expect? Of course you're fat. I don't care, by the way, but the story you're living out of, that's the only result you could expect. Mm-hmm. Of course you're poor. What did you expect? You have this story that says good people are poor people, bad people are rich people. So how could you possibly be rich with that story? That's the exact result. That's the perfect result for that story. And until you change the factory or the story, you're going to keep getting that perfect result.
I'm overweight because I've got a medical condition.
No.
But that's what you hear.
You hear all the time.
That's what they're saying to themselves.
I've got big bones.
Correct. I went to the doctor and he says I've got a medical, and this is why I'm overweight. No, it's not.
I love weight loss. I love the idea of it. And in the judgment-free space, you get to swing away and say some stuff that you could never get away with elsewhere. So I love pushing that button. Of course you're overweight. I mean, you need to be overweight. Being overweight's working for you. And I say consistently, an extra 5 or 10 kilos is the best hideout in the world. So extra weight is always some form of hiding, some form of protecting. If you have nothing to prove and nothing to defend, then it doesn't make sense for you to be anything other than your best. So if you're carrying extra weight, it's not your A game. You're lowering the expectations of yourself. You're somehow diminishing what others would expect of you as well. I say to people all the time, what would happen if you woke up tomorrow with a six-pack? Assuming you don't have one already. Who would you have to go be? What would others expect of you? What would you expect of yourself? You know, you kind of expect to be awesome if that's who you are. Whereas if you're Captain Vanilla and you're just kind of hiding, no one really expects you to do anything great. So you get to hide behind that. So again, the underlying insecurity around, well, what if my best isn't good enough? So I better not present my best. Because if I show up at my best and get judged, then, well, that's going to hurt a lot. So People Work Perfectly is just this great framing story that says, hey, listen, you can always understand why you do what you do. And it's not broken, and it's not strange, and it's not weird. Of course, let's go look at the factory. And there's no judgment, by the way, so it's safe to look at this because it's not going to make you a good person or a bad person. Just going to understand why.
Secondary gain, Dr. Phil.
Dr. Phil, good old Dr. Phil.
You know, life isn't easy for most people, is it?
No.
So what happens when you're out of flow or when you're out of sync with your philosophies and your values? How do you reset?
Oh, that's such a great question. A psychologist friend of mine gave me a metaphor that has helped me with this more than anything else. He just drew a picture of a rocket ship, you know, the trajectory heading to Mars, and said, do you know what percentage of the time that rocket ship is on track for that destination? I don't know if you know the stats. Do you know what?
Obviously, it's not a lot.
Not a lot. He said it's about 3% of the time. The rest of the time, it's noticing where it is in relation to where it wants to be and making necessary course corrections to get back on track. So the most technologically advanced machine we've created as humans is only on track 3% of the time. And so we have this expectation, you know, New Year's resolutions. Right, this is my year. The moment you get off track, I failed. That's it, I'm no good. So I have inbuilt being off track into my story to go, I will probably be off track more than I'm on track, to be honest. Yep. And so my job is, without judgment, to notice where I am in relation to where I want to be and make necessary course corrections. And the more often I do it, the more minute the course corrections are, rather than, you know, it's 6 weeks since I've journaled and now it's a massive course correction to get back, and then, you know, it's just this constant swings. It's like 3 or 4 times a day. You know, Jaemin, remember who you are. Oh, that's right. What was I thinking? Why was I anxious? Oh, that doesn't make sense. Back in the zone. You know, just constantly resetting, constantly aligning myself to a beautiful story, a secure position, internally referenced, clear about my goals. Yeah, so I do that all the time. And it's in my expectation that I'm going to be off track. So when I find myself up there, often I'm like, oh, great. It's not like, oh, you idiot, what are you doing? So of course you're going to be off track. Just nip it in the bud before it sends you way off track.
I think I'd be highly surprised if the listeners didn't get any value out of this, Ben, in terms of, and that's why, you know, I had Jaemin come and course correct me, and Andrea, and it's been wonderful. But what would be the parting thing that you would say to the listener? Because they've obviously spent, you know, the last 30, 40 minutes with us. I'm sure it's resonated with them. But what's your best advice to people to stay on track with the things that you've talked about today and not sort of get caught back into the way things always are?
This perhaps sounds cliched, but it would be the one parting bit of advice, is that you can have what you want. It is possible to create a life you don't need an escape from. That's not fairyland. It is possible to do life well. And you know, people imagine their problems are complicated and unique, but they're not. Like, we all go through the same kinds of challenges, just in different ways. So the way forward is always simple and hard. And I think all you need to succeed in any area is the right framework, the proven framework, someone skillful enough to hold you in that space. So it's the parting thing is, it is okay to dream. Like, yes, it's dangerous, yes, it's challenging, but to switch off your humanity and just settle for what you've currently got, please don't. Like, that's a horrible idea. And yeah, we'll sum it up by saying that.
I'm going to challenge the listeners by saying that there will be there'll be a lot of listeners who will be like, this is fantastic. But there'll also be a lot of listeners who are saying, crap, this guy's full of himself. Keeps referring to himself in the third person. Do you know what I mean?
Did I really?
Yeah, in terms of that. But that's the alignment piece, right? So
what you said, Jaemin, you're okay.
Oh, yeah,
yeah, Jaemin, you're okay.
Remember who you are, Jaemin.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly, right. So I'm putting a challenge out there to those people who are sitting there saying, not for me, not for me. I want you to open your mind. I want you to listen to this podcast again, and probably even for a third or fourth time, because there were some messages in there about finding fulfillment, finding happiness, finding peace. And that's what life's all about. But you don't want to find it when you're 65 or 70, right? So, we've got to smell the roses on the journey. I've got some takeaways from today, big ones. So that's all I'm saying for some of those listeners who sort of say, geez, this bloke, he's left of centre. Yep, but he's successful, he's in demand, he's living the life that he wants to live on his terms. And
to borrow his term, he's actually smoking what he's selling, Ben. He's not, what is it, living in the overflow of what you're doing in your own life?
Well, I'm non-negotiable about that. Anything I share has to be worked out of my own life, and out of the overflow of that, then I feel like it's okay to share that with others. If I'm banging on about some stuff that I haven't applied to my own life, that's unfair.
Yeah.
Because can I say, Ben, like...
it's not authentic.
I've read scores of books, I've attended plenty of seminars, I'm a student of life, I am keen to make sure that I know in my own self that I am enough and that I can get over the insecurity that we all face, right?
Yep.
So I wasn't easily impressed. I said that to Jaemin, and the stuff that he was up on stage and he was modelling what it looked like to be someone who doesn't sit up there and say I'm perfect. He never once said, I've got this covered, I'm done, job is done. He said, I'm continually correcting the work in progress, but was well and truly ahead of other people that I'd seen. And, you and I go to those seminars, we get pumped up, we get excited by what someone has to say, but then we walk out of the room and we don't have any lasting change. So that was the thing that made a difference for me. And I'm certainly an unofficial, unpaid fan of what Jaemin's doing because it's working in my own life, and I wanted to share it with our community.
I think it's a good move.
Mate, it's terrific that you came on.
Yes, thank you very much. That was awesome.
Thanks for having me.
It was a pleasure. Now, for those people that are Ben, Jaemin has a podcast called The Insecurity Project.
Beautiful. Check it out in the show notes.
But the point in saying that is, do you know how you talked about having an open mind?
Yeah.
Here's what I'd say to you. There's on his podcast, he actually has a one-on-one consultation with someone who says, I've got this going on in my life. Can you help me work through it, right? Goes for about half an hour. They are brave souls. Because I don't know that I'm there yet. And then I could get you to record it.
That's right.
Which obviously Jaemin has to work on with me.
Hi, I'm Mike.
Yeah.
I've got a voice that sounds similar to Bryce Holdaway.
That's right. They are brave souls. And they come from, here's what's going on for me. You can feel it at the end of the conversation where they've just gone, you've just cleared that for me. So I would my challenge is go listen to one of those.
I'm going to go and check one out, that's for sure.
I'll listen to one of those on the Insecurity Project. And of course, he's got the book, Elegantly Simple Solutions to Complex People Problems. So we'll put
Great
some links to those.
I like that as well. Have to get myself a copy.
I challenged Jaemin on, mate, it's a long title, like you are firm that's the title. That's the message. Take a word out and you miss some of the message.
If you miss the word elegantly, you think it's overly simple. If I just said, I've got a simple solution for your complex problem, then you think you haven't understood my problem.
Yeah.
But if it's an elegantly simple solution, like, that's interesting. Maybe it's an intelligent and complete solution.
So certainly go and check it out. Ben, my life hack today is really simple, and it's probably it's a bit of a theme of what we've been chatting about today.
Yep.
But I have 2 Facebook accounts, right? And I'm probably on Facebook more than I should be. So I'm the first to admit that. But I've got 2 accounts. One is a professional version account, and the other one is my own personal one, which I monitor a lot. And what I've come to the conclusion is that I have now culled that list down to the people that I have a reasonable expectation of having an interaction with in the next 6 months.
Okay.
Because it used to be the high school friends and hundreds and My list is probably no bigger than, I don't know, 120 people, right? So all family are on it. I don't have to interact with that. That's
So everyone tick family,
that's a given.
all good.
I live on the East Coast, they live on the West Coast. That's just a way of me staying connected.
Yep.
But the people who I invite onto that personal Facebook page are people that have a reasonable expectation. Because if it's not, Ben, I get the comparison game thing going on. I see someone who I went to school with 25 years ago who's just done X, Y, and Z that really appeals to what I want. And all of a sudden I start to compare myself and say, well, am I not having what they've got? And I just think it's not serving me. It's actually not putting me, I didn't realise the articulation was it wasn't putting me in the right state, but it's absolutely not serving me. So I've actually done a cull to the point where it's just the reasonable expectation of having an interaction with someone in the next 6 months. If they don't, I take them off. So that's my life hack today, Ben.
I love it. Very good.
Did you know?
So coming to the pointy end of the World Cup, I thought I'd just throw a couple of little interesting facts about the World Cup. World Cup was first played in 1930 in Uruguay. Yeah, and guess who won the tournament? Uruguay. So tick, we got that one done. So we've got a great idea. We want to have a world tournament where everyone plays, but only 3 other nations can come.
Yep.
And we've got a good chance of winning it.
Yeah.
No, so that was number one. In terms of...
And nothing's changed in 2000.
Have they won any more since then? I don't know.
The same politics exists.
Exactly.
On where it's played.
Now, I love the numbers.
Yes.
3.2 billion people. That's almost half of the globe's population tuned into the 2014 World Cup.
Wow.
So it is the world game. There is absolutely no doubt about that. And obviously, all of our boys have come back home. We're no longer there. A couple of other interesting facts. The oldest person to kick a goal in the World Cup was Roger Milla from Cameroon, 42 years of age in 1994. I remember watching that. That was pretty cool. And my favourite interesting fact about the World Cup, it was rumoured that India withdrew from the 1950 tournament as they were not allowed to play barefoot. So obviously in India, they play in bare feet back in the 1950s. So there you go, a couple of interesting facts about the world game.
Very good. And mate, you burning the midnight oil, checking out the games?
I have been watching a few of the games, so yes. But I don't know anything about them other than they're incredibly talented. I don't like the staging. I think that's a blight on the game. But I look past the acting and see the magic that's happening out there. So it's all good.
Save that for the AFL of late. Yeah. So very good. No, I didn't know those things, Ben. Thanks for sharing those. But again, mate, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Jaemin. Thanks for having me.
We'll leave some details in the show notes if you want to reach out and say good day. But I hope that was of enormous value to our community, Ben.
And me.
Oh. Good.
There we go.
That was very good. So, but mate, we're off. We better head off to Fed Square and get ready for TPC Live tonight. If you're not coming tonight, we'll see you next week. For those of you who are coming tonight, look forward to meeting you. Until next week, Ben.
Knowledge is empowering, but only if you act on it.
See you later.